Emma walked home from school like any other day, her backpack hanging loosely over one shoulder. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The streets were busy with people heading home from work, cars honking, and children playing on the sidewalks. Everything seemed normal. She was just a few blocks away from her house when she heard a loud crash. It was followed by the sound of people screaming. Emma froze for a moment, her heart pounding. She turned her head toward the noise and saw a terrible sight. A small crowd had gathered around a car, which had stopped in the middle of the road. Something felt wrong. The way people were gasping, the panic in their voices, it made her stomach twist. Emma ran toward the scene, pushing past the crowd. Her breath caught in her throat when she saw what had happened. An elderly woman was trapped under the car. Her frail body lay half-crushed beneath the front bumper, her gray hair spread out on the pavement. The woman's wrinkled face was twisted in pain, her lips moving, but no sound came out. Her hands trembled as she tried to lift herself, but she was too weak. Emma's chest tightened. People were standing around, whispering, taking out their phones, but no one was helping. She looked at the driver, a middle-aged man, who was pacing back and forth, pulling at his hair in shock. He kept muttering, "I didn't see her. She came out of nowhere." Emma knew she couldn't just stand there. She dropped her backpack and ran to the woman's side. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" she asked, her voice shaking. The old woman's eyes fluttered open. She gasped for air, struggling to speak. Emma bent closer, trying to catch her words, but all she heard was a weak whisper. She turned to the people around her. "Help me lift the car," she shouted. Some people looked away, others mumbled excuses. "The car is too heavy," someone said. "We should wait for the ambulance," another muttered. But Emma could see the woman's face turning pale. There was no time to wait. Her hands pressed against the car's front, her body trembling with fear and determination. "Somebody, please," she begged. Her voice cracked. But then, a man stepped forward. He was tall and strong, wearing a blue jacket. "All right, let's do this," he said firmly. Together, they pushed against the car. Emma gritted her teeth, every muscle in her body straining. The man groaned, his arms flexing with effort. For a moment, it felt impossible. But then, the car shifted slightly. It was just enough. Emma wasted no time. She crouched down and carefully pulled the elderly woman from under the car. Her hand shook as she held the woman's fragile body, feeling how light she was. The woman let out a weak breath, her fingers clutching Emma's wrist. Emma looked into her tired, pain-filled eyes, expecting her to say something like, "Thank you," or "Help me." But instead, the woman whispered something that made Emma's blood run cold. "Be careful. They're watching." Emma blinked. "Who's watching?" she asked, but the woman's eyes slowly closed. A chill ran down Emma's spine. Suddenly, sirens wailed in the distance. The flashing red and blue lights of an ambulance appeared down the street. Emma exhaled a shaky breath, relief washing over her. But at the same time, she couldn't shake the eerie feeling growing inside her. As paramedics rushed in and lifted the woman onto a stretcher, Emma stood back, her mind racing. The crowd slowly began to disperse, people returning to their normal lives, as if nothing had happened. But Emma knew something had changed. Something wasn't right. She watched as the ambulance drove away, its lights flashing in the night. The woman's warning echoed in her mind. Who was watching? And why did she sound so afraid? Emma couldn't get the woman's words out of her head. As the ambulance disappeared down the street, she stood frozen, replaying the moment over and over. "Be careful. They're watching." The words made no sense, yet they sent a chill down her spine. Who was watching? And why did she sound so afraid? She picked up her backpack with shaky hands, glancing around. The crowd had already started to thin out. People were going back to their normal lives, chatting, laughing, as if nothing had happened. But for Emma, everything felt different now. She turned to the man who had helped her lift the car. Did you hear what she said? Emma asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The man frowned. What do you mean? Emma hesitated. Maybe she had imagined it. Maybe the old woman was just confused. Never mind, she muttered, forcing a small smile. Thanks for helping. He nodded and walked away, leaving Emma standing alone. The street looked the same as before, but something felt off. It was that strange feeling you get when someone is watching you, even when no one is there. She shook her head, trying to push away the uneasiness. It had been a long day. She just needed to go home, eat dinner, and sleep. Maybe tomorrow, everything would make sense. But as she walked the last few blocks to her house, the feeling only grew stronger. She couldn't explain it, but it felt like someone was following her. She glanced over her shoulder. The street was empty except for a few cars dragging by. The sky was darker now, the streetlights flickering on. She told herself she was overthinking. Just go home. She picked up her pace, turning the corner onto her street. That's when she saw it. A black car was parked a few houses away. Its engine was off, but something about it made her uneasy. It wasn't there in the morning, and even though the windows were tinted, Emma felt someone was inside, watching. Her heart started pounding. She forced herself to look away and walk faster. The moment she reached her front door, she quickly unlocked it, slipped inside, and shut it behind her. She pressed her back against the door, breathing heavily. This is ridiculous, Emma. You're just paranoid. But deep down she knew something wasn't right, and she had a feeling this was only the beginning. You said. Emma couldn't shake the uneasy feeling, even after locking the door behind her. Her heart was still racing as she stood in the dimly lit hallway of her house, trying to convince herself that everything was fine. Maybe the black car was nothing. Maybe she was overthinking. But deep down, she knew something was wrong. She peeked through the curtains of the living room window, her breath hitching. The black car was still there, parked under the streetlight. Its headlights were off, its windows dark. It wasn't moving, but somehow it felt like whoever was inside was waiting. Emma swallowed hard. Should she tell someone? Her mom was still at work, and she didn't want to sound crazy. Maybe it was just some random car, nothing more. Still, she couldn't bring herself to look away. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, making her jump. She pulled it out and saw a message from her best friend, Lily. Lily, did you see the news? That old lady you saved, she's missing. Emma's stomach dropped. Missing? That wasn't possible. She had just seen her get into the ambulance. Her fingers trembled as she typed back. Emma, what do you mean missing? She was taken to the hospital. A few seconds later, Lily replied. Lily, I'm serious. The hospital said she was gone when they checked on her. No one knows how she disappeared. Emma's hands felt ice cold. The woman had been weak, barely able to move. There was no way she just vanished on her own. Someone had taken her. Her mind raced back to the moment at the accident scene. The woman's whisper, the fear in her eyes. Be careful. They're watching. Emma suddenly felt sick. What if the woman had known this would happen? What if she had been trying to warn her? She glanced out the window again. The black car was still there. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. Was it watching her too? You said. Emma's hands felt clammy as she clutched her phone, staring out the window. The black car hadn't moved. It just sat there, its dark windows hiding whoever was inside. Her heart pounded. Was it connected to the old woman's disappearance? She took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Maybe it was all a coincidence. Maybe she was just being paranoid. But something deep inside her whispered that this wasn't random. She typed another message to Lily. Emma, do you think someone took her? A moment later, Lily replied. Lily, ick, but it's weird. Hospitals don't just lose patients. Emma shivered. Her eyes darted back to the car outside. It was still there. Not moving. Just watching. She had to do something. Sitting here, staring at it, wasn't going to help. Maybe if she got a closer look, she could figure out if she was just imagining things. Her pulse quickened as she moved away from the window. She didn't want to go outside, but she needed answers. She grabbed her hoodie, slipped on her sneakers, and quietly opened the front door. The night air was cold against her skin as she stepped onto the porch. The street was quiet. No one else was outside, just her and the black car. She took a shaky step forward, then another. Her heartbeat thumped louder with every step. The car was parked a few houses down, near the corner. If she could just get close enough, maybe she could see who was inside. As she moved toward the car, she felt the weight of silence pressing down on her. The only sound was the soft rustling of leaves in the wind. She clenched her fists, her breath unsteady. Then, the car engine roared to life. Emma's body froze. The headlights flashed on, blinding her for a second. The tires screeched as the car sped away, disappearing into the night. She stood there, her whole body trembling. Whoever it was, they had been watching. And now, they knew she had noticed. A terrible thought crept into her mind. Had they been watching her since she saved the old woman? And if they were watching her, what did they want? You said. Emma's legs felt weak as she stood on the empty street, staring at the spot where the black car had been. Her hands were ice cold, her breath shaky. Who was in that car? Why were they watching her? She knew one thing for sure. They had left the moment she got too close. That meant whoever it was didn't want her to see them. But why? What were they hiding? She turned and rushed back into her house, locking the door behind her. Her heart was still racing. This wasn't just her imagination. Something strange was going on, and it all started with that old woman under the car. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from Lily. Lily, are you okay? You're being really quiet. Emma hesitated, her fingers hovering over the screen. Should she tell Lily about the car? Would she even believe her? Emma, something weird just happened. A minute passed. Then Lily replied. Lily, what? Emma took a deep breath and started typing. Emma, there was a black car parked outside my house. I think someone was inside, watching me. But when I tried to get closer, they sped away. Lily didn't respond right away. Emma stared at the screen, waiting, feeling more uneasy by the second. Then 3 dots appeared. Lily was typing. Lily, Emma, I don't want to freak you out, but I think I saw the same car earlier. It was parked near my street. I thought it was nothing, but now. Emma's blood ran cold. The same car, near Lily's house. Her mind raced. If the car wasn't just watching her, then what was going on? She thought back to the old woman's warning. Be careful, they're watching. Emma clenched her phone, her heart hammering. Whoever they weren't just watching. They were following. You said. Emma's fingers tightened around her phone as a wave of fear washed over her. If the black car had been near Lily's house too, that meant this wasn't just about her. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of everything. Was this connected to the old woman? Was it because she had helped her? Nothing about this felt normal. Her phone buzzed again. Lily, Emma, what if this is serious? What if we're in danger? Emma swallowed hard. She didn't want to admit it, but Lily was right. This wasn't some random coincidence. The old woman had disappeared from the hospital. A strange car had been watching Emma. And now, the same car had been near Lily's house. Someone was following them. But why? She turned away from the window and sat on the couch, gripping her phone tightly. She had to do something. But what? Go to the police. Tell her mom. What if they didn't believe her? Her thoughts were interrupted by another message from Lily. Lily, maybe we should go to the hospital. Find out what really happened to that old woman. Emma's breath caught. The hospital. That was the last place anyone had seen the old woman before she vanished. Maybe there was something there. something they weren't being told. Her fear twisted into determination. Sitting at home, scared, wasn't going to help. If she wanted answers, she had to find them herself. Emma. Okay, let's go, but we have to be careful. Lily. Meet me in 20 minutes. Emma's heart pounded as she typed her reply. Emma. I'll be there. She stood up, grabbed her hoodie, and took one last glance outside. The black car was gone, but she knew it wasn't over. Whoever was watching them, they weren't done yet. And Emma had a terrible feeling that once they started looking for answers, things would only get worse. You said. Emma moved quickly, pulling on her hoodie and slipping out the back door. She didn't want to take any chances. If someone really was watching her, she had to be careful. The night air was cool, but her skin was damp with nervous sweat. She kept glancing over her shoulder as she walked toward the meeting spot, a small park halfway between her house and Lily's. The streets were quiet, almost too quiet. Every shadow felt like it was moving. When she reached the park, she spotted Lily standing near a street lamp, her arms crossed. The moment Emma approached, Lily whispered, "Are you sure about this?" Emma nodded. "I need to know what happened to that old woman." Lily sighed. "Me too, but I have a really bad feeling." Emma did too, but she wasn't about to turn back now. They headed toward the hospital, their footsteps quick and silent. When they arrived, the place was still busy. Nurses and doctors walked in and out, and a few patients sat in the waiting area. Emma and Lily slipped inside, keeping their heads down. "How do we even find out anything?" Lily whispered. Emma glanced around and spotted a group of nurses talking near the reception desk. She strained to hear their conversation. Still no sign of her, one of them was saying. "It doesn't make sense. A woman that injured couldn't just disappear." Emma and Lily exchanged a look. They were definitely talking about the old woman. Taking a deep breath, Emma stepped closer. "Excuse me," she said, forcing a nervous smile. I heard about the missing woman. Do you know what happened?" The nurses turned to look at her. One of them, a tired-looking woman with dark circles under her eyes, frowned. "You shouldn't be asking about that, sweetheart." Emma's stomach twisted. "Please, I helped her when she was trapped under that car. I need to know if she's okay." The nurse's face softened, but she still hesitated. Finally, she sighed. "Look, all I can say is, something about this case is strange. There was no security footage of her leaving. None. 1 minute she was in her room, and the next she was gone. And the weirdest part," she lowered her voice, "the cameras outside the hospital stopped working for 20 minutes, right around the time she vanished." Emma felt her heartbeat quicken. Someone had deliberately erased the footage. Someone didn't want anyone to know what happened to the woman. Before she could ask another question, a voice interrupted them. "You girls shouldn't be here." Emma and Lily turned around and froze. A man in a dark suit stood behind them. He wasn't a doctor. He wasn't a nurse. And the way he was looking at them made Emma's stomach drop. He knew they were asking questions, and he did not look happy about it.